This is the Social Skills Mastery Podcast, episode 267. To really compete as a professional or business owner, you have to own the room. That's why each week I bring you hot topics, tips, and expert interviews so you can stand out in competitive places. Let's get started. Hey, quick question. Do you ever find your heart racing right before a big moment? When the spotlight hits and your brain suddenly forgets who you are, that's not a confidence problem. That's your inner critic hijacking the controls. And I built Confidence on Cue to fix that fast. It's a short, powerful 5-minute audio that resets your mind before any meeting, presentation, or social interaction. It helps you halt overthinking, center your energy, and step in as the impactful, impressive professional people trust and remember. It'll train your thoughts, emotions, and energy to work together so you walk in composed, clear, and compelling. Go grab it now at socialconfidencepro.com/switch. It'll change how you show up in every high-stakes moment from here on out. Let me ask you something. What if the promotion you didn't get, the client you didn't land, and the strategic relationship you never built all have one thing in common? It's not that you weren't qualified or that you weren't smart enough or even that you weren't in the right place at the right time. It's that when the moment came to step forward with, let's call it social bravado, to say the bold thing and to make the audacious ask and to position yourself as the obvious and clear choice, you stayed silent. You decided to be a bit coy and humble and to play it safe. And as a result, you let the opportunity pass because taking that kind of interpersonal risk felt too uncertain, too exposing, and perhaps too dangerous. The truth is that the people who rise to the top of their fields aren't necessarily more talented than you. They've just learned to reframe what you choose to see as a risk into what they see as strategic positioning. And in this episode, I'm going to show you exactly how to make that shift. By the way, I'm Susan Callender, and I specialize in helping deep-thinking analytical professionals, engineers, accountants, directors, financial analysts, researchers, and you, the rising star, develop the kind of interpersonally connected executive presence that opens doors before you even knock on them. And today, we're talking about something that separates the people who get noticed from the people who get promoted. We're talking about social bravado, or the ability to step into high-stakes professional moments with the kind of confidence that makes people think, now that's my leader. Because here's what I've discovered after years of coaching really smart people. You aren't held back by a lack of skill or knowledge. You're held back by the way you interpret uncertainty in social and professional situations. So where confident people see opportunity, you see a threat. And where they see strategic positioning, you see perhaps recklessness. And it's that difference in interpretation that's costing you everything. So let's start by reframing what we're talking about here. I want you to stop thinking about taking risks and start thinking about demonstrating social bravado. Because risk implies there's danger. It implies you might lose something. And it makes your nervous system go into fight or flight mode, which is exactly the opposite of the state that you need to be in to perform at your best. But social bravado, on the other hand, that's more about claiming that space that's already yours and speaking up because you have something valuable to contribute. You can think of it as positioning yourself strategically because you're prepared and you're capable and you deserve to be seen. It's the same action but a completely different frame. And that frame makes all the difference. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're in a meeting with senior leadership, because you're the one with the knowledge and insight, and your VP asks for input on a new initiative, and you have an insight that could genuinely shift how your team approaches the problem. If you're operating from a risk mindset, here's what you're thinking. What if my idea isn't fully formed and I look unprepared? What if everyone judges me? What if I'm wrong and it damages my credibility? You're seeing threat everywhere, and your brain's calculating all the ways that this could go wrong for you. And so you stay quiet and you let the moment pass, and someone else speaks up, maybe with an idea that's not even as good as yours, and they're the ones who get remembered. But here's how someone with social bravado thinks about that exact same moment. They would think, I've been analyzing this problem for weeks, and my perspective adds value. And speaking up positions me as a strategic thinker in front of leadership. And even if my idea needs refinement, contributing to this discussion demonstrates my initiative. It's the same thing, and the same opportunity has been presented to you, but you have a completely different interpretation, and as a result, a completely different outcome. The person with social bravado speaks up, and their idea sparks a deeper discussion. Maybe it gets implemented and refined, and it leads to something even better. But either way, they've positioned themselves as someone who thinks strategically and contributes at a higher level. And they've made themselves visible in a really meaningful way. And let's say 3 months later, when a new director role opens up, guess whose name comes up in the conversation? Now, I can hear some of you thinking, that's great for naturally confident people, but I don't feel that confident. I can't just decide to have social bravado. And that's where you're wrong, because social bravado isn't a personality trait that you're born with. It's a skill that you're developing through daily preparation and reframing your thoughts. Let me break this down. The reason confident people don't see these moments as risky is because they've prepared for them. Not necessarily for that specific moment, but they've built a foundation that makes them ready when the moment comes. Think of it this way. You wouldn't feel nervous about doing your actual technical work, would you? If someone asked you to analyze something or review a research protocol or evaluate a financial model in your area of expertise, you wouldn't break into a cold sweat. You would just do it because you've done it hundreds of times. You've prepared and you don't have a second thought about it, other than up-leveling how it was presented now versus 6 months ago, because styles and technology are always changing. Now, social bravado works the same way. It's being so prepared that the nervousness becomes background noise instead of a showstopper. So what does that preparation actually look like? Let me give you a framework. You could start by accepting your deep domain expertise. This is where most of you are already excelling. You know your field and you understand the technical aspects of your work better than almost anyone in the room. That's not the issue at all. But here's what you might be missing. You need to be able to translate that expertise into business impact, into true quantifiable value added. In other words, you need to connect the dots between what you know and why it matters to your organization's goals. For example, let's say you discovered an inefficiency in how your company processes customer information. Now, this technical finding, it's impressive, but that's not social bravado. Social bravado is being able to walk into your director's office and say it in detail. Like, I've identified a process optimization that could reduce customer onboarding time by 40%, which, based on our current volume, would translate to approximately $2 million in operational savings annually. I'd like to put it together in a proposal for implementation. So you've just reframed your technical work into strategic business value. That's preparation that enables bravado. And strategic visibility is key, because confident people don't just do great work and hope someone notices. They create strategic visibility around their contributions. So they would volunteer to present your team's quarterly results to senior leadership, or writing a one-page summary of a complex project outcome for executive distribution, or offering to lead the cross-functional working group that everyone else is avoiding, or even requesting a conversation with the VP about future department initiatives. But you're thinking right now, that feels self-promotional. That feels like showing off, and that's not who I am. Let me reframe that for you. Strategic visibility is not self-promotion. It's making sure your value is properly recognized so you can have even greater impact in the organization. When you hide your contributions because you're more focused on what your coworkers will think about you, you're not being humble. You're depriving the organization of the opportunity to leverage your talents more effectively. What too many socially hesitant and overthinking professionals completely miss is the opportunity to build relationship capital. Taking risks in high-stakes moments is 10 times easier when you've already built relationships with the people in the room. Makes sense when I say it, right? Let's suppose you need to propose a significant change to how your department operates, and this change will affect multiple teams and maybe require budget reallocation and possibly disrupt current workflows. If you haven't built up any relationship capital with the stakeholders involved, walking into that proposal meeting feels absolutely terrifying. You're asking people who barely know you to trust your judgment on something that affects their work. So the nervousness is legitimate because you haven't laid the groundwork. Here's how someone who has the confidence to take social risks approaches this same situation very differently. 3 months before that proposal meeting, they scheduled one-on-one coffee chats with key stakeholders to understand their priorities, and they've asked thoughtful questions about the challenges each team's facing. And they've shared relevant insights or resources that might help those stakeholders succeed. And in the process, they very well might have also built credibility and trust through all of these small, consistent interactions. Now, when they walk into that proposal meeting, they're not strangers asking for something audacious. Nope. Instead, they're seen as trusted colleagues presenting a solution to problems they've already discussed. And the nervousness drops dramatically because the foundation is already solid. Are you with me? So let's talk about what's happening in your head during these high-stakes interactive moments, because the difference between someone who demonstrates social bravado and someone who freezes up isn't their external circumstances, it's the internal dialogue. It's what you're telling yourself. I'm going to walk you through 3 common scenarios and show you exactly how to reframe your thinking. Let's call the first one the executive introduction. And in this scenario, you're at an industry conference and you see a senior executive from a company you'd love to work with standing alone. This is a golden opportunity for a strategic introduction. Now, if you choose to access your threat-based thinking, you'll quickly default to, they're probably too busy and don't want to be bothered. Or, I'll sound like every other person trying to network with them. Or, what if I make a bad impression? So the default outcome is that you avoid eye contact, you get your coffee, and you walk away, and you lost an opportunity. Now, when you deploy social or interpersonal bravado-based thinking, instead your brain quickly double-clicks on, I have 60 seconds to make a memorable impression. What's one specific valuable thing I can say? They're at a conference specifically to meet people in the industry. I'm giving them what they came for. And even if this conversation doesn't lead anywhere, I'm building my confidence muscle for the next opportunity. And the outcome is that you approach with a specific observation or a question that demonstrates you've done your homework. Maybe it leads to a follow-up conversation, and maybe it doesn't, but you've positioned yourself as someone who takes initiative, and you've proven to yourself that you can do it. I'll call the next one the unsolicited proposal. This is when you've identified a significant opportunity that falls maybe outside your current role, but it aligns perfectly with your skills and the company's goals, and you want to propose that you lead this initiative, but it means going to your manager or director without being asked. Now, thread-based thinking would cause you to stop short in your tracks and say, this isn't my lane. What was I thinking? They'll think I'm overstepping. What if they take my idea and don't give me credit? And as a result, you never make the proposal. And 6 months later, someone else leads a similar initiative and gets the visibility and the career advancement that could have been yours. Had you accessed your bravado-based brain, your thoughts would have been more along the lines of, I've spent 3 months working on this and I discovered an amazing opportunity and I'm prepared to share it. And the worst case scenario is they say no to the proposal, but remember me as someone who thinks strategically. Leaders respect people who identify opportunities and bring solutions. This positions you as a leader. And the outcome is that you request a 30-minute meeting with the relevant VP and present a concise, well-researched proposal. Maybe they say yes, and maybe they say not right now. Maybe they call on you to share your finding in a higher-level meeting where you previously would have not even been invited to have a seat at the table. But because you've demonstrated strategic thinking and initiative at the highest level, you're now on their radar as someone ready for bigger responsibilities. If you're working with a cross-functional partner whose communication style is creating delays and confusion for your entire team, you need to address this directly with them, but you may also worry about damaging the working relationship. So as a result, your thought is, if I bring this up, they'll get defensive, and maybe our working relationship will get even worse. Or maybe I'm being too sensitive. And when you choose to say nothing, the communication problems continue and your team's productivity suffers and your own reputation takes a hit because you're unable to deliver results on time due to dependencies that you won't address. You always have a choice. Know that you always have a choice. You could choose the thought and action that addressing this professionally is actually my responsibility as a project lead. I can frame this as a process improvement conversation, not a personal criticism. Having difficult conversations effectively is a core leadership competency, and this is your opportunity to demonstrate it. Something you may not realize is your physiology and your psychology are intertwined. You can't think your way into confident action if your physiology is screaming that it's a dangerous situation. So before any high-stakes professional interaction where you want to demonstrate bravado and courage, you need to get your physiology into a confident state. And don't interpret this as woo-woo nonsense. It's how your nervous system works. When you're being avoidant and nervous, your brain interprets those signals as dangerous, and no amount of positive thinking can override that physiological signal. But here's what you can do instead. 2 minutes before that big meeting, that difficult conversation, or that strategic introduction, physically change your mindset and your energetic field by just standing straight up and pulling your shoulders back and lifting your chin and taking 3 to 4 deep breaths in through your nose and hold for a count of 4 and breathe out for a count of 6. In fact, controlling your breathing alone literally changes your biochemistry by reducing cortisol levels and increasing oxygen to your brain and signaling to your central nervous system that you are safe and you are capable. Now, of course, always be mindful that your words are like a wand and that they reinforce your mindset. Something as simple as, I am prepared for this conversation, I have valuable insights to contribute, and I've done the work to earn my place in this discussion. They all matter. So don't think of it as woo-woo positive thinking either, because this is accurate thinking. You are prepared. You do have valuable insights. You have done the work. You're just reminding your nervous system of facts it's forgotten in the moment. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not at all suggesting you jump from avoiding all visibility to presenting at the next board meeting. Social bravado is a muscle, and you have to build it progressively. And you can structure that progression. You can choose to contribute one substantive comment in every team meeting, and you can send a weekly email to your manager highlighting your key accomplishments, or volunteer to lead one team process or project that no one else wants. If you're ready to step up a level, request quarterly one-on-ones with your manager to discuss strategic priorities, and volunteer to present your team's work at a department all-hands meeting. Really big for you? Could be attending at least one industry meeting or event every month, and just pledge to yourself to create at least 3 meaningful connections at each gathering. And if you're truly ready to go high level, propose a new initiative directly to senior leadership and stop thinking of these interactions as the only route being through their executive assistant and seated in their office. Join or at the very least attend industry gatherings where that person is a member or maybe the main speaker one month. It's in these more relaxed settings that our guard is down and we're more receptive and welcoming to proposals. And applying yourself to present at an industry conference or publish thought leadership content is a fantastic way to raise your profile. Let me give you a practical framework you can use before any situation where you want to demonstrate just how courageous you've become. What specifically do you want to achieve? Do you know what that is? Not, I want to network better, but I want to establish a great relationship with a particular individual so I'm positioned for cross-functional opportunities. What information do you need? Who are the stakeholders? What are their priorities? What objections might they have? What data supports your position? What will you say in the first 30 seconds? Practice it until it's smooth, but not robotic. You want to sound prepared, but definitely not scripted. And identify your value statement. What specific value are you bringing to this interaction? Why should the other person care? And what's in it for them for sure? What's in it for the organization? And also plan your follow-through. What's the next step after this conversation? How will you continue building the relationship or advancing the initiative? And finally, just set up your contingency. What's your plan if they say no? If the conversation doesn't go as planned, what will you do? Having a contingency removes the all or nothing pressure. And when you've done this preparation, you're not taking a risk anymore. You're actually executing strategy. Here's what I want you to take away from this episode. Confident people aren't braver or more naturally charismatic than you, and they're not less nervous than you in high-stakes moments. They've just learned to interpret those moments differently. Where you see risk, they see readiness. And where you see potential embarrassment, they see opportunity for visibility. And where you see reasons to stay quiet, they see reasons to step forward. And here's the beautiful part. That reframe is available to you right now. Not after you get more experience and not after you feel more confident, but right now. You can decide today that the next time you're in a meeting and have something valuable to say, you're just going to say it. Not because you're not nervous, but because you're prepared and your insight adds value. And you recognize that. You can decide today that the next time you have an opportunity to introduce yourself to someone senior, you're just going to do it. Not because it feels comfortable, but because you've done your research and you have a specific, valuable reason for the introduction. You can decide today that the next time you see an opportunity to lead, that you're going to step forward. Let me tell you something. People who rise, those who are commanding double your salary, don't do it by being perfect. They do it by consistently demonstrating that they're ready for the next level before they're officially in the next level. They speak up in meetings when they have something valuable to say, so when a leadership position opens up, decision makers already see them as someone who contributes at that level. They build strategic relationships across the organization, so when cross-functional opportunities arise, their name is already top of mind. They propose initiatives and solutions. So when the company is looking for people to lead more important projects, they're known as someone who identifies opportunities and takes ownership of them. That's you. Every single act of social courage is a deposit in your long-term career capital. And here's what's fascinating. Most people never make these deposits. They stay quiet and they wait to be asked. And they play it safe, which means the bar for standing out is actually much lower than you think. You don't need to be the most charismatic person in the room. You just need to be the person who consistently shows up with preparation and contributes with confidence and demonstrates readiness for bigger opportunities. So here's my invitation to you. This week, I want you to identify one specific situation where you've been playing it safe. One conversation you've been avoiding or one introduction that you haven't made. And one idea that you haven't shared. What initiative have you not proposed? This is your week. And apply the Bravado Prep Framework to it. Do your research, define the outcome, prepare your value statement, and get your physiology into the right place. And then do the thing. Not because you're 100% certain it'll work out perfectly, and not because you feel completely comfortable with it, but because you're prepared, you're capable, and you're demonstrating that this is how you build the career that you actually want. The nervousness might not go away completely, and that's fine. You're not trying to eliminate your feelings. You're trying to act effectively in the presence of nervousness, and that's exactly what social bravado is. It's learning how to manage risk in your nervous system. Listen, I know that you can think, oh, this sounds great, Susan, but you don't understand my specific situation. My company culture is different. My industry is more conservative. My personality is more reserved. And you might be right. Your situation is unique, but here's what I also know. The professionals who rise to the top of every industry, every company culture, every field, they all have one thing in common. That they stopped waiting for permission to be visible, and they stopped hoping that someone would notice their great work, and they stopped believing that staying small was the same as being humble. And they built their expertise, and they prepared thoroughly, and they positioned themselves strategically, and when the moment came to step forward, when the moment came to speak and to lead, they just did it. Not perfectly, and not without nerves, but effectively. And consistently and strategically. And that's all you need to do. You don't have to be perfect. Just be prepared. Your expertise is so valuable and your insights matter a lot. That's why you're there. Your leadership potential is real. And the only question is whether you're going to let the world see it. So stop seeing these moments as risks and start seeing them as the strategic positioning they actually are. And stop waiting for someone to invite you to step forward. Just start recognizing that you've already been preparing for these moments through all the work you've done, all the expertise you've built, and all the value that you've created. You're ready. You've been ready. Now it's time to show everyone else what you already know about yourself. Thanks so much for joining me today. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Send me a message, leave a review, share this with a colleague who needs to hear it. And remember, social bravado isn't a personality trait. It's a strategic skill, and you're building it right now. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye for now. Wait, before you hit stop, let me leave you with this. Imagine walking into any meeting, event, or conversation and just settling in. Not bracing, overthinking, or wondering how you're coming across. Just knowing you belong and showing up like someone whose insight carries weight and who knows the protocol and can be comfortable anywhere. If that kind of ease and confidence feels a little out of reach right now, you're not alone. A lot of high performers feel less certain in the moments when presence matters just as much as competence. And that's the gap we close. Let's talk. We'll look at what's tripping you up, what you want to be more confident doing, and what it would take to show up with the social polish and presence that matches your performance. If you're ready to feel more solid, seen, and like the leader you know you can be, head to socialconfidencepro.com/coach and choose a time. It's literally your call.